Hello and welcome to this BioProcess International Ask the Expert webcast. I'm your host, Leah Rosen, the online editor for BioProcess International. Before we get started, just a couple of notes. This webcast is being recorded and will be made available for replay in the multimedia section of our website. We've muted the audio lines, but we welcome you to type in your questions for our speakers in the question and answer window on your screen. After the presentation, we will begin the question and answer portion, and I will ask our speakers your questions. Your questions in the question and answer window will only be visible to myself and our speakers. So thank you for joining us today. It's now my pleasure to introduce our speakers, Chad Schwartz and Eric Nalbach from Thermo Fisher Scientific.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining the webinar. I'm Chad Schwartz, a Senior Global Product Manager at Thermo Fisher Scientific, responsible for proprietary cell culture media formulations. I will be giving the first half of our talk today and then hand it off to Eric Nalbach, General Manager of Media at Thermo Fisher, to close out the presentation, which will be followed by a Q&A session to answer any questions you may have. Thermo Fisher Scientific is the world leader in serving science with annual revenue exceeding $24 billion. Our global team of more than 70,000 colleagues delivers an unrivaled combination of innovative technologies, purchasing convenience, and pharmaceutical services through our industry-leading brands, including Thermo Scientific, Applied Biosystems, Invitrogen, Fisher Scientific, Unity Lab Services, and Patheon. Our commitment to innovation is also world-class. Over 5,000 of our employees work in the research and development space, and our contribution to R&D spend is over $1 billion per year. As the world leader in serving science, it is our task to help clinicians, academics, and scientists from all over the globe advance their cause. Our mission is to enable our customers to make the world healthier, cleaner, and safer. Whether our customers are accelerating life sciences research, solving complex analytical challenges, improving patient diagnostics and therapies, or even increasing productivity in their labs, we are here to support them. Today, we're going to cover 4 separate topics, followed by a Q&A session, where we are hoping that the audience will provide Eric and I with some thoughtful questions on the topics of interest. I'll start us off. We're going to look at the impact of COVID-19. We'll explore how COVID-19 has affected a number of different industries, which in turn impacts how Thermo and other media manufacturers are able to serve customers. We'll then get into the drivers of outsourcing media manufacturing. Here we're going to describe the value of outsourcing supply and why this is particularly important during times of global supply strain. The bulk of the presentation today, this afternoon, will discuss specific items to consider when the decision has been made to outsource, diving into areas to ask potential future suppliers to ensure that you are establishing the proper relationship as you consider the scale-up of current and future biologic candidates. Finally, we'll end with a summary. Here we'll give a high-level synopsis of considerations around outsourcing, and even provide a couple comments at the end of the presentation as to why Thermo Fisher Scientific should be your partner of choice. Following the emergence of the novel coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2, this is the virus that causes COVID-19, far-reaching impacts to both daily life and the economy have been spreading across the world. With most countries facing recessions in 2020, the impact of this pandemic is being felt globally. The bioprocessing industry has been thrust into the spotlight this year with the race for a vaccine and other associated biologics to help combat this disease. Simply put, the bioprocessing industry is under unprecedented pressure to deliver at record speed. To achieve this, innovative new technologies are being developed, and never-before-seen platforms are currently in late-stage clinical trials. In fact, to date, there are 176 vaccine candidates, including 33 of which are in clinical trials, and 339 therapeutic candidates to date, and 293 of those are in clinical trials. Priorities have changed. where previously both large and small pharma houses were focused on drug candidates for a number of human and animal health diseases. The onset of the pandemic has shifted these programs to now favor COVID-related remedies. Upon successful completion of clinical trials, eyes will soon turn to manufacturers to quickly produce an approved vaccine, truly in unprecedented volumes, which in turn leaves companies searching for reliable suppliers of critical process materials. Global supply networks are facing an increased pressure to facilitate these demands, where in the past, supply chain managers and demand planners would rely on forecasts, typically, to set inventory levels. Many companies have been left scrambling to organize any sort of supply strategy due to COVID-19. One area in particular that has seen a rise in demand is the production of cell culture media, which will be the topic of today, and is used in the production of not only a vaccine, but also associated biologic therapies, which will support a return to normality as soon as possible. The demand has risen sharply in recent months, spurring many organizations to strategically outsource production to fulfill their long-term requirements for global scale-up. With the global economy relying on a market-ready vaccine as soon as possible, it is imperative that the industry can get it right the first time. Despite COVID-19's neutral or even positive impact on the global biologics market as a whole, it is not quite business as usual. Over 6 months or more into this pandemic, trends are beginning to emerge in the global bioprocessing industry that will likely carry on for many years to come. The onset of the novel coronavirus has affected nearly every industry in some way, and global supply chains may have been impacted the most. A recent report by the New York Times in March reported that the cost of shipping cargo across the Pacific Ocean has tripled due to COVID-19, and in turn, cargo capacity was down 35% compared to 2019. New import and export regulations have been established in many countries as a result of trying to slow down the spread of the virus. Businesses and their colleagues alike have been deemed essential or non-essential, which has restricted access to a number of commonly used goods and material. There has even been vast changes in consumer priorities and buying behaviors. We once saw stores lined with common household goods. Today, we often see aisles empty as supply chains tried to keep up. Many facilities were shut down altogether, and distribution networks put at a complete standstill. As sites begin to reopen and staff allowed back on the premises, new protocols have been established, which has also resulted in additional processing and lengthier lead times. As the bioprocessing industry has attempted to keep up, many companies are finding that redundancy of supply and working with established suppliers is critical. We will take a look at these key attributes in the following slides here. But first, we have a quick interactive poll question. And I will turn it over to our moderator to explain those details here.
Okay, great. Thanks, Chad. So our first question is now on your screen. You just need to use your mouse and go ahead and make your selection. What should you look for in a cell culture media manufacturer? Select all that apply. And the answers are strict raw material sourcing and characterization procedures, IP protection, large capacity, redundancy and manufacturing capabilities, a collaborative relationship, supply continuity, emergency crisis risk mitigation procedures, and strong logistics and distribution networks. You go ahead and make your selections. We'll see those on the screen. We're just going to give you a couple of seconds to do that, and then we'll continue with Eric.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. This is Eric Nalbach. I'll be taking on the rest of the presentation towards the end. And as we look at the poll question, not surprising where we see some of the higher percentages. Again, looking at the strict raw material sourcing, the supply continuity, very important, and of course, just as Chad mentioned, strong logistics and distribution network, absolutely critical to get raw materials that the customer base requires for manufacturing. So that's great. Thank you very much. So when looking to outsource media manufacturing, especially in the current climate, what should you look for in a supplier? So as we get started with outsourcing media manufacturing, why outsource media manufacturing? When scaling up production of biologic therapeutics and vaccines, even gene therapy and cell therapy these days, many organizations decide to outsource whether it's bulk liquids or dehydrated media to third-party providers. We do acknowledge that a lot of the customer base may have already one supplier approved for production, and especially in COVID times, access to more capacity and manufacturing expertise is paramount to risk reduction. That said, there's definitely a consideration for ensuring that there are multiple sites approved and even multiple vendors approved for outsourced media and or bulk processed liquids. So with all that considered, finding the right choice for media manufacturer can be a challenge. What we have in the upcoming slides is the essential toolkit or considerations and or questions to ask your choice of media manufacturer and or supplier when considering to outsource your media manufacturing to them. All of this will help you make the correct choice to ensure long-term goals are met. So first, we're going to go into supplier relationships. And again, when deciding to outsource media manufacturing, one of the most important things is to ensure that the relationship with your supplier is the right fit to your organization. A collaborative relationship rather than a transactional relationship and a customer-centric approach is important to help ensure that your strategic, technical, and quality needs are met. You may consider how many team members will be assigned to your company and how and what times of the day and week do you have access to them. You can consider ask whether they have a system for account management, ordering, tracking, and any notifications or changes that may be a part of that order to delivery cycle. For example, an online portal that combines each of these so it happens in all one place, making life easier for you in terms of order management and delivery. Next topic we'll tackle is intellectual property protection. When partnering with a cell culture media manufacturing provider, you must be sure that they provide the utmost confidentiality and protection of your IP. We all respect that all customers around the world have unique cell culture manufacturing recipes, and those need to absolutely be held in strict quality assurance program with respect to our IT firewalls. So the question we want to ask here is, what firewalls prohibit access to these confidential documents, both internal and external, and what type of IT quality assurance program that the vendor may have, and also how they protect external threats. What's also paramount is that there's adequate training of the staff and the employee agreements and records are able to be fully audited. Next, we turn to quality procedures and management systems. Robust and stringent quality management systems, or QMS, that cover all stages of a process should be adopted by media manufacturing providers. A few quality considerations. Very much important in today's world is reduced risk of cross-contamination within facilities, because there are many products in the world that need to be animal origin free, and in some cases there are some animal or human components that are in certain media products. Things to look out for may include unidirectional flow of raw materials, personnel, or products within the facility. You also consider gowning, degowning, and the types of material airlocks with the right pressure differentials. QC labs, do they have separate material and waste flows? Operating systems should be connected, allowing any potential errors to be flagged simultaneously across systems. So in the end, a robust QMS is paramount to ensuring that the quality and the first time product of manufacturing is number one within the organization. Next, we move on to raw material sourcing and characterization, which was definitely one of the number one or top poll question or answer response today. Supplier's quality standards for raw material sourcing and characterization should be one of the top considerations when contemplating outsourcing cell culture and media manufacturing. Again, things to consider are how they qualify their raw material vendors, and also what if there's specific specifications or compendias that are required for a process that has to be understood up front to ensure that the raw materials are on site for your potential formulation. Also, with all the raw materials, are there analytical specifications that are all met to ensure that the raw materials are fit for use? You can question how often the vendor completes audits on their raw material supply, and how do they monitor their ongoing risk? Is it when needed? Is it an annual process? And also, if there are change notifications to a formulation or a raw material, how will you be notified if there's a change? We know in cell culture media, and especially in today's world, that trace element analysis is paramount to a robust and consistent media supply for robust and consistent manufacturing of a finished good. Things to consider are asking about their critical analysis program, raw material analysis programs, and what types of methods do they use for trace element analysis, and to compound that, are raw materials tested as each lot comes in? What about finished good testing? Is that critical to your process? And can the vendor perform finished good testing on your formulation? And again, it's very important that the media supplier can meet and control the trace element profiles, especially in large-scale production, especially in the COVID world today. The asks can be for thousands and thousands of tons of product to meet the demand of vaccines and the therapeutics that are required for global supply. Next, we move on to supplier capacity and redundancy. The Global Footprint and Robust Equivalency Program helps maintain redundancy and supply continuity, especially in a time of a global crisis. When we think of capacity, we would want to ask our vendor, what is their capacity for production? And it's definitely format driven. Is it a liquid product? Is it a dehydrated powder product? And what is their current utilization rate within their facilities? And again, how has COVID-19 impacted their capacity? more than ever, not only for COVID times, but for other parts of the industry that are growing as therapies do come to market, redundancy is mission critical. And we have to inquire where those facilities are positioned around the world, and is it true risk mitigation and redundancy, is that important within their capabilities? And if so, you need to have equivalent products made at each facility, so they really need to explain their equivalent strategy. And lastly, with respect to redundancy, do they have secondary, tertiary, quaternary sources of the key raw materials that would go into your media formulation? Next, we move on to supply chain management and logistics. And one major challenge that pharma faces in preparing their own customer formulation or custom formulation is management of raw materials. This becomes a huge problem for complex formulations as the number of suppliers of raw materials increase. A lot of modern formulations have hundreds and hundreds of raw materials, and it's imperative that to maintain that supply is an extensive effort. When a company takes a step back and looks at the amount of overhead associated with keeping up with the ordering, procuring, warehousing, and raw material stocking along with safety stock strategy, the production and the outsourcing of complex solutions might be the most economical and practical choice. Moving on to logistics and distribution networks, custom order fulfillment relies on a robust finished good distribution network to help ensure that your product arrives to you on time and in full. As Chad said earlier, during COVID, a lot of flights were taken out of the air due to the decrease in human demand. And as a result, shipping lanes have gotten much tighter and more expensive. With that said, you might want to ask how the vendor connects up and explain their global distribution network and how they work internally with their company systems to ensure that there are defined distribution routes across the world, whether it is rail, whether it is truck, whether it is ship, whether it is air. And again, when it comes to storing raw materials, you want to discuss their approach and how they store them, and again, what measures they've put in place to prevent further impact, especially due to COVID-19 in respect to safety stocks. As we look into ongoing risk mitigation procedures, what's very important in today's landscape is business continuity and, again, risk mitigation procedures. We consider asking about their business continuity and risk mitigation plans. Are they robust enough to ensure supply continuity? What additional plans have they put in place to combat the increased demand during COVID-19? And some points to consider with respect to business continuity or their BCP, what is the vendor's emergency response, disaster recovery, and business recovery protocols? Do they have them? Are they in place within their organization? You can consider, do they have backup power? Do they have generators on site, for example, or secondary electrical systems? And if there are product specification changes, do they offer a quality customer notification program for all of those changes for your product? And finally, again, we can't stress enough that the equivalency programs and facility redundancy are paramount to ensuring that product is manufactured for you in time and in full and on time. So as we close the presentation, again, a summary for the essential toolkit. And we'll, in review, you need to question and ensure that there are robust IP protection procedures in place, that the supplier is collaborative and wants a collaborative relationship that suits your needs. They understand that they have a robust quality management system and a robust global logistics and distribution network. It's very important that you ensure that they have a high amount of available capacity and facility redundancy for manufacturing. Of course, number one on the poll was confirmed that strict raw material sourcing, qualification, and characterization is undertaken. And lastly, asking about their procedures for ongoing risk mitigation and their business continuity plan. So as I close, we are with Thermo Fisher, so we ask you to join forces with the trusted pioneer of scalable bioprocessing solutions. And as we look at it within Thermo Fisher at the Gibco Media Manufacturing Network, we want to highlight that we have 3 manufacturing facilities for media, primarily in Grand Island, New York, near Niagara Falls and Buffalo, Miami, Florida, as well as Paisley, Scotland. We also have peptone manufacturing, Detroit, Michigan, as well as animal origin-free peptone manufacturing in our Miami facility. In Asia, we have one of the largest serum manufacturing and distribution networks out of New Zealand and Australia, as well as media development and analytical services in our Baltimore, Maryland facility, as well as Shanghai, China, and Singapore. I'd like to thank you very much for your time, and at this time we will go into a question and answer session.
Okay, great. Thanks, Eric. So the first question is, has Gibco experienced any disruptions in supply of critical raw materials as a result of COVID-19, and how has the organization handled this for their customers?
Sure, happy to take that. Thermo Fisher, we do source in excess of 1,000 raw materials for our global media manufacturing network, for our customers' formulations, as well as some of the products that we've launched throughout the years. At that scale, it is understandable that some of our vendors have experienced some disruptions in supply as a result of COVID-19. But prior to the pandemic, our strategy always has been to ensure multiple vendors are approved for critical raw materials. That's not always a foolproof plan by any means, as many cell culture media components are difficult to produce, which also could have been impacted due to COVID-19 with manufacturing shutdown. We have recently been qualifying a number of new suppliers across the globe, and while working with customers on prioritization of their SKUs or stock keeping units. So in summation, really, at Thermo Fisher, we have a very large network, and during this unprecedented time, we were able to source certain raw materials internally due to the breadth and depth of Thermo Fisher, and a lot of our company is raw material supply, and we definitely prioritize those programs to combat COVID-19 within our manufacturing facilities.
Okay, great. And how does Thermo or Gibco demonstrate achieve equivalence amongst manufacturing sites?
I can take that one, Eric. That's a really good question there. I think first and foremost, right, we strive, Thermo's a very large network, and we strive to provide that redundancy amongst the 3 major manufacturing sites that Eric mentioned earlier. And this is for, just as a reminder, this is for liquid powder as well as AGT media formats. At Thermo, we utilize both pin mill and FITS milling technologies. So that's certainly of note, and we need to demonstrate that equivalency amongst those 3 sites. So I think firstly, we start with how we source equipment and our materials. So we make sure that our suppliers that we use for these different pieces of equipment and different materials are harmonized. and approved within our quality management system. So that quality management system is harmonized across the 3 sites. We utilize the same processes and standard operating procedures for the milling and blending, for example. And I guess when we are unable, when there are some gaps in equivalence, just by the nature of things, we will perform process validation studies to demonstrate that equivalence. So we would, if we're manufacturing either a custom or even a catalog product in those 3 different sites, we would want to demonstrate equivalence for particle size, homogeneity, and some of those other attributes that you would look at for the media. In fact, we would send this in an equivalence packet to the customers. And furthermore, we will work directly with customers on SKU level equivalence for regulatory filing updates. So, we look at equivalence in a number of different ways, and we understand our customers' need to demonstrate that equivalence. So this is through testing processes, people, et cetera.
Okay, great. And what are some of the expected long-term effects of COVID-19 for biomanufacturing suppliers?
Yeah, I can try to take that one as well. So I think there has been, a substantial investment in capacity to support our overall customer base. I think, as we've seen an increase in COVID-related demand, we've certainly seen, a lot of growth in the market outside of COVID. I'm sure, other media manufacturers have so as well. We first and foremost here, we want to make sure that our essential employees remain vigilant, they remain safe and healthy throughout the crisis. This is priority number 1. We do have a escalation standard work process in place. Essentially, these are processes to prioritize pandemic-related projects. At the same time, we want to provide uninterrupted supply to all of our customers, even if it's not COVID related. I think you'll see moving forward, customers or media manufacturers having more robust sourcing strategies. For example, multiple vendors for each raw material. Both Eric and I mentioned manufacturing redundancy strategies. And that was part of the question previous. So having those 3 sites under the Thermo network has certainly been beneficial to us in this COVID-19 times. And then finally, I guess I'd point out it's important that we have flexible operations. We need to make sure that we allow and maintain rapid turnaround times, even in a pandemic like this.
Okay. Well, it looks like we just have time for one more question. If we didn't get to your question, we will be passing all these questions on to Chad and Eric, and they can follow up with you directly. So feel free to continue to ask questions, and they will get passed along. But the last question for the webcast is, should a company start vaccine manufacturing without having a cell culture media manufacturing company or section?
This is Eric. I'll take that. I mean, it's a fair question. If your company hasn't contacted a media vendor, I wouldn't want anybody to stop their process and their development of their vaccine. I can respect that maybe they don't have the right capacity to produce the volume of media that they need for manufacturing, but I think that it's a great question that it should prompt your company and your team to please get in contact with us, and we can talk about the logistics of what your needs are and how we can best support you. So thanks for the question, and Chad and I would be happy to talk to you about how we can support the development of your vaccine therapeutic.
Okay, great. Thanks, Chad and Eric.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks to our audience for joining us. The recorded version of this webcast will be available for on-demand viewing on our website, and as a registered attendee, you'll receive a follow-up email providing you with a direct link. We look forward to having you join us at future BioProcess International Ask the Expert webcasts. Look for those announcements in your inbox. Goodbye.